As noted, when Ronald Reagan made the disastrous mistake in 1982 of deregulating the SNLs, a whole bunch of predators moved in, like Neil Bush with Silverado, and basically started loaning money to all their buddies, regardless, particularly large commercial buddies, regardless of their ability to pay, and giving themselves huge dividends and giving themselves loans, in fact. And to the point where they crashed the entire SNL system. What did Ronald Reagan do in 1986 when the crash came about as a result of his own deregulation? A, he re-regulated the SNLs. B, he brought in Bill Seidman, a good conservative Republican, to run the thing. C, he fired every single executive in that entire banking industry. D, all the stockholders lost everything that they had. And E, he put over 1,000 banksters in prison and issued warrants for over 2,000 of them. The Republican icon, Ronald Reagan. Well, now we've got the banksters having crashed the economy again, made off with trillions of dollars. There are some estimates as high as $15 or $20 trillion total in the United States and around the world as a consequence of the actions of these guys. And it looks like 5,000 people have already had arrest warrants issued against them. Matthew Vadum is with us. He's a senior editor from Capital Research Center, capitalresearch.org, the website. Matthew, great news. 5,000 people going to prison?
Woohoo! Let's have a party. Why are they going to prison, Tom?
Well, actually, I guess the bad news is that these are all working people who couldn't afford to pay their credit card bills, and we now have debtors' prisons in the United States.
Why are they going to prison, Tom?
Because they didn't pay their bills.
Okay, like who? Can you give an example?
Well, wait a minute. You're writing in support of this. You don't know what I'm talking about?
No, America doesn't have imprisonment for debt.
No, we don't. But we do have 5,000 people who have had various kinds of court orders issued to them. Most of them failed to show up for the court order, and so warrants have been issued for them.
Okay,
the effect is that they could go to prison because of the debt. You get people who are unemployed, you get people who are sick, you get people who are out of work, you get people whatever. They get behind on their credit card bills, and if they don't do the whole dance exactly right, they go to prison. This is how China does it. You know, China has this law that says you can't move from province to province without the permission of the government. More than 90% of the Chinese population has violated that law at some point in their lives. And so when the government wants to take somebody down and put them in prison, they simply invoke that law.
Well, Tom, let me ask you this. Should people have to appear in court when they're ordered to appear in court?
Matthew, let me ask you this. Should we be putting banksters in jail No, I'm sorry, Matthew. You're my guest. I'm not your guest. Should we be putting people in prison when they crash our economy and last year put $140 billion in their own pockets after the Fed gave them $9 trillion in zero-interest loans? Shouldn't those people be going to prison rather than people who can't afford to pay their credit card bills? I mean, we gave these banksters $9 trillion. With $1.4 trillion, we could have paid off every subprime mortgage in this country.
I thought we were here today to talk about your Dickensian fetish fantasy that there are debtors' prisons out in there and that there's Oliver Twists wandering around getting in trouble for asking for some more gruel. You seem to think that not coming to court when asked to appear in court by a judge is somehow okay.
Not everybody gets their mail, especially if their home has been foreclosed on and they no longer live there.
Well, you have to, when you're asked by a court to appear, you have to show up. And you know what happens if you show up and you don't have any money? Nothing. The judge says, okay, come back in 6 or 12 months and we'll talk again. People have an obligation when asked to appear in court to appear in court. If they don't show up, that is a problem.
Right.
And
I don't disagree. Matthew, you're right on those things, and we don't have debtor prisons in the United States. But what we have now is the effect of a debtor's prison. You've got 5,000 people who've had arrest warrants issued against them because of a chain of events that started because they were in debt, and they were put into debt because of 30 years of insane economic policies, Reaganomics, and the deregulation by Phil Gramm and Bill Clinton of the Commodities Futures Modernization Act and the banks. They're blowing up Glass-Steagall. This crashed our economy, and we're putting average working people in prison or threatening them with it if they don't show up in court to answer for their debt instead of dealing with these banksters. I don't get it. And on top of that, then also we're saying, these guys in Congress, let me get the list here, these 5 Republicans want to pass a law that says that if any member of your family any member of your family goes on strike and your family happens to be on food stamps, you lose the food stamps.
Well,
You're defending this?
I'm not a fan of the food stamps problem, of the food stamps program, but that does. I only heard about it today when your producer asked me to appear on the show, and I haven't studied it, but I will agree
it's House
that
Resolution
it
1135.
sounds pretty arbitrary.
Yeah, it's House Resolution 1135. Jim Jordan from Ohio, Tim Scott, South Carolina, Scott Garrett, North New Jersey, Dan Burton, Indiana, Louis Gomer, Texas.
Well,
By coincidence, all Republicans.
It sounds pretty arbitrary.
And it says, I'll quote from the law, so that you know.
Either you should be eligible for them or you're not.
I'll quote from the proposed law for you, so that you have the same database that I do. Striking workers ineligible, notwithstanding any other provision of law, no member of a family unit shall participate in the food stamp program at any time that any able-bodied work-eligible adult member of such household is on strike as defined in the Labor Management Relations Act because of a labor dispute other than a lockout as defined in Section 2.9 of the National Labor Relations Act. Isn't this nuts?
Okay,
I mean, aren't we turning into a punitive, aren't we just like punishing the poor here?
I don't know about this legislation, but it sounds arbitrary and capricious and weird. And as I just said, I would think that I'm no fan of the food stamps program. It's a bad thing. But if people are going to be eligible for it, I don't think you should put all sorts of strings on it.
Why is it a bad thing to say to somebody who can't afford to buy food, we will pay for your food? Isn't that what Jesus told us to do in Matthew 25?
Provide incentives to people to not look for work.
So you're saying what should you do for a dog when it's down? You should kick it?
No, not at all. Not at all. I love dogs.
Well, I've actually that's an old conservative joke. I've heard it a number of times. What do you do for a dog when it's down? You kick it, otherwise it won't get up. But what if it's down and getting up isn't going to do it any good? I mean, we've got I ran a help wanted ad here a while ago, and Craigslist in Washington D.C. and got like 400 applicants. It's incredible how many people are looking for work.
Did you hire the person?
We ultimately did, hire a person.
Oh, that's good. You're a socially responsible person, I guess.
No, I'm not. I'm a businessman making a profit.
Oh,
I don't create the profits. The people who buy the products of my advertisers create the profits. They are the jobs rather. They create the jobs. I'm not a job creator. I'm just an entrepreneur.
You're just an exploiter.
Yes, I think you could say that.
All right. Well, at least you admit it.
What I'll tell you is that I'm not making 30 times what any of my employees are. I'm not even making twice what any of my employees are. I'm not that level of exploiter, frankly. And so I'm rather comfortable with being a small businessman who's running a profitable, comfortable small business. I got no problem with that. And I think that we need more of that in America. But when you got CEOs who are making $100 million, I think that there's something fundamentally wrong with this country.
Well, then you're saying there's something fundamentally wrong with economic freedom.
No, I'm saying there's something fundamentally wrong with somebody making $100 million a year off this country.
Why?
Because they are sucking up enormous amounts of the well, first of all, who needs $100 million to live?
Money that they created.
Come on. Are you trying to tell me that Stephen Hemsley creates money? He skims money off the top of he's a banker who inserts himself into the health insurance industry, the CEO of United Healthcare.
Well, it sounds to me like you're condemning the capitalist system, and that
I'm not. I'm condemning unregulated capitalism, and I'm saying we should go back to the tax rates under Nixon and Eisenhower. It worked really well then. We had a lot of jobs.
Well, if you say so, Tom.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm old enough to remember it. Matthew Vadum, capitalresearch.org. Thanks,
Okay,
man.
thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for dropping by.